Hi everyone, welcome back to the next diecast. In today's video, I'll be showing you and reviewing this 1/18 scale Porsche 911 Targa made by Maisto. I got this model off of eBay for $35 in total, including shipping and everything. Maisto no longer makes this particular model, but when they were still making it, you could find it in this nice dark metallic blue with the gray interior, a dark red with a black interior, and also a silver with a black interior. You can find these models on eBay. The dark red seems to be the most common, and the silver seems to be kind of harder to find compared to the other two colors. And you can find this model for anywhere between, $15 in kind of loose condition, upwards of maybe, $45, mint in boxed. So this is from the 996 generation of the Porsche 911, which first came out for 1997. And then in 2002, Porsche facelifted the 911 range and introduced several new models to the line, including the Targa version that you see here, the 911 Carrera 4S, and the 911 Turbo, and the Turbo convertible. Back in 2002, Maisto actually started making 4 different versions of the 996 in their 1/18 scale line. They made the Targa, which is what you see here. They made the Carrera 4S Coupe and 4S Cabriolet, as well as the Turbo Cabriolet. And all 4 of these models, I would say, are pretty similar in terms of overall detail and quality, but you are going to see some differences in terms of, paint colors, interior colors, and wheel styles and whatnot. So this review will kind of give you a general sense of what those models will be like in terms of detail, although we'll specifically be taking a look at the Targa version that you see here. But overall, I think for an early 2000s Maisto model, the details on here are quite well done when you compare it to other budget brands during the same era. So we'll go ahead and take a look at the details. We'll start up here with the front of the model. I think Maisto did a great job with the shape of the facelifted headlights here. They're nice and flush with the body. And a cool thing that they actually do is they sort of hide the pegs a little bit as bulbs. You can see there's kind of a bulb here, here, and here, and there's actually pegs kind of inset to those bulbs. So if you look at it from a far distance, the pegs are pretty much invisible. So of course now you'll see them because I pointed them out, but I thought that was kind of cool that they sort of hid them a little bit. Of course you can still see them, but I think they do a good job of kind of trying to hide them somewhat. Aside from that, the lights do have the accurate overall shape to them and appearance. You can see all the different like halogen bulbs on the inside and everything, and there is no gap between the lens and the metal body, which is nice to say. And of course in the front you do have the Porsche shield, which is nicely embossed. It's not a sticker or anything. You can clearly read Porsche if you look at it like really closely, and they have the nice detailing on the badge too. The front bumper is actually made of plastic, but you really can't tell unless you're looking at it in like direct light. Like right now you can sort of tell, but because they opted for like a darker paint color on the model, you can't really see it all that well, but I don't think that's a big deal. The paint quality on this model, I would say, is very well done. This dark blue was available on the real 911 Targa, and the 996 Targa was produced from 2002 until 2004, I forgot to mention. The 997 generation of the Porsche 911 replaced the 996 for the 2005 model year. This was a paint color offered on the real 996 Targa. You have kind of a, not really a metallic finish, but it does sparkle a little bit. If you opt for the dark red version of the model, it is like a metallic finish, so it will kind of have like a sparkle effect to it. But the paint job is nice and smooth throughout. Although you will see on the side mirrors here, it is kind of obvious that they're plastic. I kind of wish that they used the same paint for the side mirrors that they did for like the metal parts of the body, but you really can't tell unless you look at it like really close. Taking a look at the side here, Maisto did a great job with these wheels, which were available on the European version of the 911 Targa. I don't think here in the US we got these wheels on the 996 Targa. We got, I think, the same wheels that came on the 911 models prior to the facelift. So I think they kind of look a bit off, and I prefer these wheels over those wheels, and I'm glad that Maisto kind of went with this wheel style. But all the spokes are nicely molded. You even have the lug nuts in the center there, along with the Porsche badge. And you do actually have branded tires, which is very nice to us say. These are Pirelli, I think. Yep. And you also have the nice detailing with the brake disc and caliper too. Of course, the brake disc does not spin with the wheel, but that's pretty typical of a Maisto model. Not a big deal. This model will be sitting up on the shelf for the most part. And of course, you do have full steering, very good steering, I might add, and suspension too. So typical of 2000s Maisto model, the suspension is a little bit, does kind of jam up a little bit. You kind of have to pull it like yourself. if this were to be re-released today, you'd have, better suspension in the sense that it doesn't sound, all, clunky and everything. But again, this will just be sitting up on the shelf, so I won't be using the suspension all that much, I guess I should say. Nicely molded wipers on here. They're kind of one single piece, but they kind of hide that because they're such thin like pieces that they use for the wipers, but they are the accurate size and shape. You do have the full glass roof, as this is the Targa. If this were the real car, this whole center roof would fold back towards the back of the car. You didn't have it like you have with the current 992 Porsche 911, where the entire roof panel kind of folds back into like the as like a retractable roof piece into the trunk. On here, it's just like the roof, and like the pillars kind of stay in place. So I always thought that was kind of cool. And this rear glass would actually open on the real car. Maisto does not have this part open, so I thought that was always kind of cool. You sort of had like a practical kind of hatchback coupe with the 996 Targa, and that continued over to the 997 generation as well. But anyway, all the clear plastic windows on the model look great. There's no, scuffs and whatnot. There is a little bit of dust on here, but those are not scuff marks. And they actually do use separate pieces for, this is actually one single piece, so looks good. It's kind of like nice and flush, and the windshield is actually a separate piece too. But I think all the glass work on here is actually very well done. Of course, it's not actually glass. It's made of plastic. I'm just calling it glass. And you do have the separately cast wiper back here on this rear window, which looks very well done. Taking a look at the back, nicely detailed taillights. The gap is a little bit big between the lens and the bodywork on this light at least, but aside from that, not a big deal. There are pegs, and they're kind of off to the side a little bit, like this. But the peg is pretty well hidden unless you look at it like really closely. They sort of put it behind the dark red portion, so it's a little bit more well hidden. I mean, of course, the pegs are there, obviously, but I think aside from that, the overall shape and appearance of these taillights look very well done. You even have kind of a texture going on with the lenses too. And this license plate, same as the front, kind of peels off a little bit. I'll have to go back on there with like a glue stick or something. And this third brake light back here is actually a separately cast plastic piece, which I was kind of surprised to see, because usually if Maisto has a brake light this small in one of their models, they'll either put a sticker on there or just paint it on, but they actually put a separate plastic piece on here. That's kind of rare to see on a Maisto model, and I'm kind of glad that they did that. Nice little attention to a detail back there. And you have the Targa inscription back here in black, though it is very hard to see because it is black with this darker paint. If you opt for the silver version, which is a bit harder to find, the Targa badge will be more obvious. Or I guess I should call it the Targa inscription, but it looks good. Kind of has a nice like matte finish to it and everything. So in terms of opening features, we'll start up here with the front compartment, which opens up like so. You do have some nice detailing in here. You can see there is a spare tire cover, which has kind of a nice texture to it. That would be kind of like a leather bag, I would think, on the real car. And you have different reservoirs for fluids and everything back in here too. And you do have kind of this silver, it looks like a toolbox almost in here. And the way that Maisto sort of molds this silver box and this spare tire thing, looks like you can actually take them out of this compartment because they're actually molded as kind of these three-dimensional pieces. But of course, they're going to be staying in there. They're not going to, you can't really pull them out or anything. But I kind of like their attention to a detail in here for sure. And you actually do get a full liner underneath this hood. And the liner is actually painted blue to match the rest of the car. So I thought that was kind of a cool touch. And then we'll take a look back here at the engine. This is a mid-engine car. Of course, it's got the flat 6. The rear engine cover opens up like so. Kind of a very small piece. It doesn't open up that wide or that high, I should say. But you do have a pretty well detailed engine in here. You can see all different colored in components and whatnot. There's like a yellow fluid cap right there, as well as a blue one right there. You do kind of see a few wires and hoses in there and everything. It is just one plastic piece for the most part. You can't really see all the way down to the bottom of the car, but I think for, one plastic piece, it is actually pretty well molded, and you do actually have multiple components in there that you can see. But, for an engine that you can barely see even with this thing opened up, I think Maisto did a pretty good effort with it too. And it will probably be similarly detailed on the other versions of Maisto's 996, 911 models. So we'll go ahead and close that up. It is kind of hard to close. You have to sort of like hold the bottom of the car and push this down, and then it will close. And the shut lines and gaps are actually nice on the model too. I forgot to mention that. There's no huge gap along like the hood line or anything, and even the doors too. They're very flush. So that's nice to see that. And of course, speaking of the doors, you do have the opening doors on the model. We'll take a look at the interior detailing next. They do open up on spring-loaded hinges. They don't open up very wide. This was kind of an issue that early to mid-2000s Maisto models had. They were kind of moving away from using dog-leg hinges and moving towards using spring-loaded hinges for their doors. And Maisto still uses the spring-loaded hinges on their models to this day, although if this were to be re-released today, the door would actually probably be opened up a little bit wider. And they would be kind of, stronger, I think, because these doors do get kind of squeaky after a while on these older Maistos, but on their newer ones, you can tell that they have improved upon the build quality. But aside from that, the doors do feel very nice and sturdy on this model here. Door panel detailing, I would say, is well done for the most part. Really not too much to see on these. It's just kind of all gray. You do have kind of a nice like leather pattern going across the whole thing. There is kind of detailing for the speaker and the handle, as you can see here. That's actually a separately cast piece. I feel like there should be some more color on here, but Maisto doesn't really do the coloring too much. I'm sure the window buttons would actually be colored in, but you don't really see that on here too much. There's a kind of a better view of this door panel here, but you can see the nice pattern, so they do a nice job with that. And there's kind of that red reflector down on the bottom there. Cool touch, I would say. Maisto did a great job with the seats on this model. They look and feel just like the real leather seats you would see on the real 911. Nice texture going on there. And the size and shape is accurate. And you actually do get the separately molded seat belts too. And even with the back seat here too, Maisto does a good job of kind of detailing that. You do see kind of the seat belt buckles along with the seat belts on either side here. And this is a four-seater car. Detailing on the dashboard and center stack, I would say, is well done for the most part, although it doesn't seem like Maisto really colored in the buttons all that much on the center stack here, which is kind of weird, because on Maisto's other versions of the 996 911, I'm pretty sure they actually color in the buttons, but I don't think it's a huge deal because they do actually mold all the buttons in here. You can see all the different like radio dials and everything, and those two molded in vents, and also they do actually color in that little hazards button that's way up there by the gauge cluster. But I think they could have done a little bit more detailing in the sense of kind of coloring in the buttons on here, but I think on the other variants of this model that Maisto made, like the Carrera 4S, I think those buttons are kind of colored in. But I mean, aside from that, the dashboard itself looks pretty well done. You have kind of a nice leather pattern going across it. And the shifter is nicely molded, and it's actually a separately cast piece, along with the parking brake here too. And those have their own kind of textures on them as well. And you have kind of a rougher texture going on the floor too. And Maisto actually does include these kind of Targa door sills on here. They're actually stickers, but the way Maisto made them, they're like a matte finish to them. It looks like they're actually a part of the door sill, like that they were painted on, like instead of a sticker. So I think they did a good job of detailing in that sense too. Aside from that though, the steering wheel is actually very well done. You do have the Porsche badge in the center along with a couple of very tiny horn logos, and you do have a nice kind of shape and texture to the steering wheel too. And this Porsche badge actually looks even more, I guess, pronounced than the badge on the outside of the car, which is kind of interesting to see. Almost like they use the same exact badge, like the same paint detailing and everything. Very cool to see. And this side, you don't really see too much detail. There's a vent there, and there's a little button here and there too. And they do a nice job with the gauge cluster too. It is just one sticker, but at least it's actually applied centrally instead of kind of lopsided. So they did a good job with that too, I would say. And you do see kind of a molded in floor mat and the two pedals down there. Overall, I think they did a decent job with the interior. They just could have maybe done a better job in the sense of like fine detailing. But again, this is a budget model from the early 2000s. Not everything is going to be perfect, but I think what they did in here looks very well done. All right, we'll take a look at the undercarriage of the model next. Really not all that much to see at all. There is some detailing back here where the engine is, and you have kind of the chrome exhaust system going on. You really wouldn't see too much on the undercarriage of the real 911 Targa anyway, I don't think, but I think what Maisto has there looks pretty good for the most part. The exhaust, I wish they didn't always use chrome exhaust systems on their models, but at least on here it kind of stands out a little bit more as opposed to being kind of an all-black undercarriage, so I think they did a good job in that sense too. Overall, I would say this is a pretty well-detailed model for an early 2000s Maisto model. Very good quality in terms of paint and overall like build quality and everything. The interior, I would say, is pretty well detailed for the most part. They just didn't color in all the buttons, but I don't think that's a big deal because I think a few of their other models from that same time period didn't always have the buttons colored in. But so if you can find this model for a good price, I would say definitely get it, especially if you're a fan of Porsche and everything. And Maisto's other 996 models, like the Turbo, the 4S, and the 4S Cabriolet, I think their details sort of align well with the Targa here. Of course, they're going to have some visual differences and everything, but I think I like the Targa the best out of all of them, just because it looks so, unique compared to them and everything. And the wheels, I think, on here look the best out of all four of those models. And this Targa seems to be easier to find than those other three versions too. So if you can find this Targa for a good price, I would say definitely get it. It would fit well with your collection of Porsches, or if you collect, 2000s like sports cars and everything too. As always, hope this video was helpful, and feel free to comment down below with your thoughts on the model here. And don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching.